In fact, a week from today, my colleague Chris Uhlmann, our political contributor, joins me live in the studio. You'll be with us next week during our coverage. It's only a week, but you can see now both sides drilling into what they believe is the key message. You had Kamala Harris at the front of the White House wanting to deliver an iconic speech at the same location where Trump had delivered that momentous January 6 address.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that, look, at least speechwriters in the United States know what they're doing when it comes to rhetoric, right? So I just thought that the crafting of that speech was really good, even down to the triads and the old rhetorical devices, you know, people who understand that the language has a certain poetry to it. And yeah, at the same time trying to deliver a very hard message going back to the foundation stones of the United States, saying that, you know, we fought against a petty dictator. Well, in fact, they just didn't want to pay their taxes to George. But, but that's their history, right? And now we're not going to give in to another petty dictator. And going back, of course, that iconic Lincoln speech as well, that 77 years ago, that could this government of the people, by the people, for the people, long endure on the earth. So she brings in all of these threads of American history to paint Donald Trump as a tyrant, which of course is the message of the Democrats. And Trump, of course, too, going to his strength at the moment. So we shall see. We're not far away. My only hope is that there is a clear and decisive result on the night, because my fear is that both major parties, if it's very close, might not accept the result of the election campaign. And certainly on form, you would expect that Donald Trump won't. So I hope that it's a clear result on the night, and I hope that in the spirit of democracy, that whoever loses concedes and exits.
There'd been a sense, there has been a sense that Donald Trump had the momentum in recent days. I guess the key question is, will all of those, whether it be black men or young men, will they get off the couch and go and vote?
Yeah, and that's the real question, right? Is in the United States so different from our own system? There is, I think, a huge advantage to compulsory voting, because I also think it pushes people back towards the centre. In the United States, what we see is, because you're just getting your base out to vote, you've got to go as hard as you possibly can to that base, which coarsens the debate even more than the debate that we see here. So will people get out to vote? Well, you would imagine the rusted-on ones will. I think that Kamala Harris certainly is going to get the women out to vote, because that Roe versus Wade decision has had a big effect on American politics. And we know from the polling there that even large sections of what are Republican states believe in a woman's right to choose on that front. So that is a big issue for her.
Chris, your documentary is coming up. We've announced the date today. Can you give us the detail? What can we expect? A few sneak peeks.
Yeah, well, we're simply trying to prosecute the argument that's been put to us for so long, that when you put more wind and solar on a grid, and we're going towards 82% of all generation, we're below 40% at the moment. So we're going to, in the next 6 years, double that number, more than double that number, to have 82% of our generation come from wind and solar. The promise is that it will be greener and it will be cheaper. So we don't just look here, we look around the world to see where that actually turns out to be the case. And surprise, nowhere where you deploy wind and solar at scale and decommission the old reliable sources of power do you see the power of electricity, the price of electricity coming down. In fact, the opposite is true everywhere that is applied, because the dirty little secret at the bottom of the way that we do this generation is it cannot function. Wind and solar simply cannot function without a dispatchable source of power. That will be gas. And that will be gas for as long as the eye can see. That's the plan.
And will it, I guess the question is, will it always be expensive?
It will be expensive as long as gas is expensive, because the other thing people don't...
So we need more supply of gas?
We do, because when people talk about the price, the levelised cost, they call it, of power being very low when wind and solar is generating, when they're generating, that's true. But Kieran, a simple thing, that peak hours of demand are morning and evenings everywhere. There is no solar power in the system when that happens. So something else is setting the price of power. It's set by the highest cost of generation, not the lowest. And as coal departs, more and more often, what's setting the price will be gas or hydropower or batteries. And if you look at the last quarter, so hydropower is $154 a megawatt hour. That's expensive. Gas is $184 a megawatt hour. That's very expensive. Batteries, if we do storage, $254 a megawatt hour. So the idea that we could do the transition with batteries doesn't work physically. They don't run long enough. They can't be big enough. And they're very, very expensive. So the system that we're building isn't as advertised. It is a very expensive system where we have to plan for large portions of the time to to lose 82% of our generation. How much backup do you think you need for a grid that's got 82% of its generation based on wind and solar? 100%. You need to build 100% backup to that system. So what we are building is a very, very expensive electricity system which will be increasingly unreliable.
And that is November 19?
Yes, it is.